not have any vet bills. So many animals. Our whole goal here is immunological function. That requires several pieces to work. The first thing is genetics. You want strong genetics. For example, we practice ruthless culling. What that means is one mistake and you're out. So a cow, if we have to lay hands on a cow during birthing, we let her raise that calf, and the calf and the cow go to slaughter. They're going to be into hamburgers. No second chances. This is one of the hardest things for people to get, is because, they get attached to their animals, they name them, all sorts of things. And well, we can't sell, Gertrude, she's our favorite goat or whatever. But if you don't practice ruthless culling, you will gradually get an inferior genetic hardiness. Here's the deal: if you've got a herd of 10 or a flock of 10, one of them gets parasites, gets sick, has birthing problems, you name the issue, has pneumonia, and the other 9 don't, clearly that one has a weakness. They all have the same place, they're in the same feed, they're all in the same situation. One of them is weak, the 9 of them aren't. And so number one, genetics, ruthless culling. No second chances, no, well, let's see what they do next year, nothing. Ruthless culling. Number 2 is to make sure they get their complete component of vitamins, minerals, and of course, nutrition, diet. Give them the full nutritional profile they need. And in livestock, a lot of that is mineral, because our soils generally, certainly east of the Mississippi, are mineral depleted. They've been leached over a lot of time. Most of us are farming on subsoil. We just don't have the mineral component. And so we spend, just compared to other people I know around, we probably spend 4 times as much as they do on mineral. And good mineral, not from the feed store, Thorvin kelp, fur trail, poultry NutriBalancer, get the good stuff. Don't get it from Tractor Supply. Don't get it from, down at the feed store. Go outside the system, and that's where you find the good stuff. So, good mineral. That's number 2. Number 3 is simply hygiene. I'll get on a soapbox here in a minute, but let me tell you, the filthiest chickens I've seen are not at Tyson. They're on homesteads, where people have 10, 12 birds in a flock. They've got them in this little coop on a dirt floor. In the spring, it's all mud, and it stinks to high heavens. The kids don't want to go in there because it's yucky and smelly, and the birds are carrying dirt. Their feathers are dirty, their feet are dirty. And so, of course, this is our calling card. Move them. Keep them moving if they're on pasture, if they're outside, and if you have them confined inside, the carbonaceous diaper. That's all in this. We've done tremendous work in portraying this sanitation, this hygiene thing, so that the animals aren't breathing in fecal particulate. In a Tyson house, those birds, their entire life, they are living right on their toilet. That dust comes up into their nostrils and acts like sandpaper in their respiratory tracts, makes abrasions, and that fecal particulate goes right into their bloodstream. No wonder they need antibiotics to stay alive. So the key here, another key, is the hygiene. Keep them moving if they're outside. If they're inside, a carbonaceous diaper, so they're on a compost pile and there's no smell. If it stinks, think what it is to the animal who lives in that all the time. So it should be, it should not stink, and it should be beautiful. It shouldn't be a problem that way. Another thread of this I'm just kind of, off the top of my head here. Another thread of this, of course, don't keep geriatric animals. That's another one of my soapboxes. These folks with little backyard chicken flocks, they name the birds and they've got 7, 8-year-old chickens. Well, a chicken's not supposed to live that long. If your chicken hits 4 years old, she needs to go in the stew pot, because those geriatric birds are susceptible to pneumonia and bird flu and all sorts of maladies. And so keep young stock. A cow, a sheep, a goat, a female. The year they come up open and not bred, they won't breed. They got to go. You can't sit here and run a geriatric nursing home for your animals. They've got to pay their way and pay their bills. And then I would say finally, for us, a lot of it is simply the diversity, the fact that we have a lot of different kinds of animals, and they're in proximity to each other, which means that the pathogens, almost no pathogens cross speciate. They're species specific. Cow parasites don't affect sheep, believe it or not, and sheep parasites don't affect cow. And so one of the best things you can do, for example, for sheep parasites, is to run cows and then run the sheep. And when the cows eat the grass with the sheep parasites on them, those parasites die. So what we want are pathogen, what I call pathogen dead ends, so that the different things can be ingested by another species, another host that kills them, and you don't have the problem. So I'm convinced that a lot of our immunological function here is simply a byproduct of running different kinds of animals through these fields in proximity to keep the pathogens confused, and confused pathogens are a good thing. So there's several threads there, several things, but working together, we run hundreds of thousands of animals, and just literally do not have a vet bill. One other thing I'll say about that is we also don't do heroic measures. If a chicken gets sick, what's a chicken worth? It ain't worth much. It certainly isn't worth a $100 vet bill. And so we let it die. We have done several times over our 60 years, we've tried to have a calf with cesarean section from a cow. Cows haven't. You can't get the calf out. The vet comes, do a C-section. They've never been successful. You always lose the cow. At least we have. And so, what are heroic measures worth? There's a certain time in which you just have to let it go. And is it worth a $500, $600, $700 vet bill? Probably not. I'm sure that some of the things that we would just, if a calf gets pink eye, and we don't have much, we have almost no pink eye, but if we have a calf, usually they're late born calves, and they're born out of season and already stressed because they're born out of season, gets pink eye, blind in both eyes, we just put the calf down. It's just not worth a bunch of fooling around with medicines and all this. It just takes time. One of my favorite stories is these two New Zealand guys came to visit us one October, and well, they were in the States, and they came out. We had them to dinner. So we're sitting there eating dinner, and it suddenly dawned on them. They were in their mid-50s, two brothers. They had a huge sheep operation in New Zealand, a lot of sheep. They had about 3,000 ewes. So I mean, this is a big operation. When they have lambs, they got like 4,500 lambs. And we're sitting there having dinner, and suddenly it dawned on me, it's October here. I said, "It's spring there. You're lambing." "Oh yeah, mate. We're lambing. That's when we leave the country. Because if we stayed there, we'd lose our marriages because we'd be living in the barn with the sheep. And so when it's lambing time, we just leave the country, and the ones that make it, make it. The ones that don't. The buzzards clean them up by the time we get home, and that's the way we make money with sheep." And I've never forgotten that story. I mean, to a person who's only encountered animals as pet cats and pet dogs, that sounds harsh, but you know, wolves are harsh too. And they picked off the stragglers and picked off the ones, and that's why we have buzzards to clean up the ones that don't make it. And so I think part of it too is simply that we just have found that heroic measures just don't pay. And so let it go, let it be a lesson, whatever you learn from the situation. And maybe you picked the wrong mother, maybe you picked the wrong father, maybe you picked the wrong time of year, maybe you didn't clean things up well. There's any number of things, but dust yourself off and go on.